Global happenings today. We communicate, we analyze global news. Stay tuned.
Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back to Global Happenings Today YouTube channel. Many Nigerians have been calling out the issue of the February 25th, 2023 presidential election and how, tinted it was, how not very free, credible that it was, although the government of the day insists that it's one of the best in history of Nigeria. But some Nigerians are beginning to call out Nigerians in diaspora, EU, and Nigerians as a whole living in Nigeria to tell them exactly what we are into and why we must get the presidency right, or else we are in for a whole lot of big issues. So before going to your newspaper, kindly subscribe to our channel by clicking on the red subscribe button. Beside it, you see bell notification icon. Please go ahead, click on it to get notified as soon as we update our channel on YouTube. Let's quickly run into the news to find out exactly what we have found ourselves into and how we may likely come out of this. Well, the president of Nigeria is extremely powerful. He's even more powerful than the United States of America. The American president is often described as the most powerful man on earth, but that's only regarding foreign affairs, where he has untrammeled powers. Domestically, the United States president is extremely constrained, given the nature of American federalism and separation of powers and the robustness of his checks and balances. By contrast, Nigerian president has untrammeled executive powers. The National Assembly is typically a rubber stamp, an executive lapdog. The judiciary is actually prone to executive bullying, is usually a toothless bulldog, and the federal agencies are the beak and call of the presidency, utterly without independence. And the states, well, they are appendages of the federal government, which can make life difficult for any state that is not in its good graces. It's no wonder that some describe Nigerian president as next to God. Now, given the above circumstances and considering that Nigeria is fragile and deeply polarized along regional, ethnic, and religious divides, the president who would exercise such enormous, unrestrained powers over the country must emerge overwhelmingly from an election that reflects, without doubt, the free expression of the will of voters across the country. If given those circumstances, as a president emerged through a tainted and discredited election that would deepen Nigerians' disunity, instability, and fragility. Unfortunately, as the recently published final report of the European Union Election Observation Mission (EUEOM) on Nigeria's 2023 general elections makes it abundantly clear that Bola Ahmed Tinubu, Nigeria's current president, emerged through a deeply tainted and discredited election that failed basic transparency and credibility tests. Expectedly, Tinubu's government rejected the report and even sponsored protests to storm the European Union head office in Abuja. Yet, the report painstakingly analyzes is hard to fault. I take that again. Yet, the report painstakingly analysis is hard to fault. Of course, as always, Tinubu supporters will abuse, insult, threaten, call names on social media, but the truth be told, we need to speak truth to power. In a country where the writer lives in, which is the United Kingdom, where a prime minister was forced out of power and out of parliament for lying. And the writer admires a country like United States, where a former president was indicted on felony charges and fined in office for offense committed over 30 years ago. But in Nigeria, political leaders are above the law and institutional scrutiny. That's unacceptable, especially when their behaviors threaten the long-term unity, stability, and progress of Nigeria. As regular readers, one would expect that Tinubu becoming the president, many Nigerians opposed it due to his, some say, acute integrity deficiency, and the belief is that he ethnically and is morally needs to be looked at before he governs Nigeria. But some persons also believe that they have accepted the leadership if he actually had won free, fair, and in a credible election, But since it didn't come that way, based on the EU report and based on the fact that EU confirms that, what other genuinely independent observers has, that not the compromised ones, he said. Of course, he has said also that the verdict of the Supreme Court on the presidential election petitions, however, that he really hopes that it is not based on some perverse public policy, rationale or technicalities, but rather on reasonable and reasoned interpretation of substantive and procedural law. For the legitimacy of the decision, technicalities must not trump substantive justice and process values. If the Supreme Court must declare rerun, so be it. Bizarrely, since Tinubu became the Nigerians' president, some have argued that it doesn't matter how anyone becomes president. However, whatever route he takes, provided he performs. Those making that argument might as well also say that a military regime doesn't matter, provided it's benevolent and competent and performing. After all, what's the difference between getting into power through a rigged election that was the will of the people and through a by forced election? Truth is, the end justifies the means. Argument of those saying that the performance that matters, as if the performance is anyone's monopoly, will entrench fraudulent election in Nigeria, impede democratic development and trap the country in ever-deepening instability. Which brings us back to EU EOM report. Its main point is that there is no level playing field in Nigeria's election. This matters hugely because the essence of any competitive report or sport or game is a level playing field. That's why any athlete who wins a medal through cheating always has that medal withdrawn if found out. And any referee who is biased or incompetent always faces public opprobrium and his license might even be withdrawn. So why is it that in Nigerian presidential election, a supposedly electoral competition, someone can win through rigging and the electoral body INEC can be manifestly biased and utterly incompetent, and all we hear is that issue of go to court. Take the umpire. The EU AOM says that the election process of INEC commissioners and resident electoral commissioners leave electoral institutions vulnerable to perception of partiality. Isn't that true? Well, the former President Buhari appointed APC loyalists as national and resident electoral commissioners. Recently, Rotimi Amechi, former Rivers State Governor and Minister of Transportation, publicly said he warned Buhari not to reappoint Professor Mahmood Yakubu as INEC chairman because he is a Tinubu supporter. Truth is, Nigeria won't have credible election until INEC is truly independent of the government and ruling party. Sadly, INEC cannot escape allegations of partiality in the year's election. The fact that the bimodal voters accreditation system (BVAS) and INEC result viewing portal (RF) worked in other elections but not in the presidential election is utterly suspicious, despite the parallel excuse of technical glitches. The EU EOM report says only 31% of the presidential election results uploaded on the RF system were formally and mathematically correct. How can any election with such huge disparities in the result be credible? The other findings of EU AOM report will resonate with every objective observer. For instance, wasn't abuse of incumbency rampant? If Buhari and most of the incumbent governors are put on a lie dictator, it will show that they manipulated INEC officials and the security agencies for electoral advantages. Furthermore, although the Electoral Act prohibits the use of state apparatus to the advantage of or disadvantage of any political party or candidate, the incumbent blatantly misuse state resources to distort the playing field. So don't shoot the messenger. The EU EOM is right and it matters. Nigerian president is just too powerful to emerge through tainted and discredited election. This is coming from a resound writer who also believes that this election is not free, is not fair, and that Nigeria's president is so powerful, if not more powerful than the president of the United States. The president of the United States is the most powerful man on earth politically, but because of the nature of our politics and how we run it, Nigerian president is exceptionally powerful, judging the fact that we have the three arms of government, but they seem to have aligned, not as checks and balances now, but they seem to have aligned under the executive power based on his analysis. What's your take? Let's meet in that comment section. Do you agree with him, or do you think he's a bit on the hard side? that Nigeria is a developing democracy, which needs time to redefine, and separation of power with time will begin to